right, welcome back to our coaching network. This is number 3 of 3 in our leadership and culture series. I'm super excited about this. Braxton and the guys he's had on each time have been phenomenal. We're super excited about these 3 coaches as well. Braxton, I'll let you go ahead and take it from here, sir. Appreciate you.
Hey, absolutely. Excited to be able to kind of close this up. And for me, kind of going out with a bang with these guys in this room because I know what kind of men they are on top of football coaches. And that's when Pat and I set out to go do this thing as far as putting this together. One of the first things we had talked about is wanted to do with men that were good men, that were representations of the game. I've been so fortunate in my career to be around really good men that taught me what was right and wrong. They taught me how to be a coach and be a father. And, these 3 guys are that. And so, man, I can't wait to be able to hear from them tonight. So I'll kind of hit quick introductions and we'll just kind of hop into it. Got Jason Eck. He's the head football coach of the University of Idaho Vandals. And so excited to have Jason here. Got a chance to meet Jason probably 6-7 years ago at AFCA with his wife, Kimberly, and my wife, Jennifer, and been fortunate enough to keep up with him since then, and excited about him. And then we got Coach Van Malone, who's the assistant head coach, passing game coordinator, cornerbacks coach at Kansas State University. Me being from Texas, I've gotten to see a lot of Coach Malone's career in his time from Oklahoma State, and what you guys did at SMU, man, got that thing turned around and going in the right direction. And so I have a ton of respect for him. And then finish up with Weston Glaser, the defensive coordinator at Northwestern State University there in Louisiana. Good friend of mine, Central Texas guy through and through. Played for the Lorena Leopards. I played for the Black Cats. We didn't like the Leopards, but that's okay. When I was there, we always won, so that's all that matters back in the day. And so I'm excited about these guys. And so, Coach Eck, just if you don't mind leading us off, we're talking about leadership and culture. And so we're going to kind of talk off culture. And if you don't mind, Coach Eck, kind of to you, if you don't mind defining culture, and this will kind of be for everybody, and we'll kind of bounce around, but defining culture and what is culture to you there at Idaho?
I think culture really is the standard by which 2 guys live. I think it's not, rules. I don't think it can be, I think a lot of times you might put what you want your culture to be, but I think, what your culture really is how guys live on a daily basis and what is the standard that they go about their business that way. So I think culture is better, observed to really get a feel for it. And because of that, it's tough to just make a mission statement and then have that be an actuality.
Yeah, absolutely. What, Coach Malone, if you don't mind kind of following up, kind of hit everybody on culture and kind of how you guys see it.
Well, it's really like Coach X said, it's for us, we look at it and we talk about our core values. And so when you say what your culture is, then it's your core values at work, and we always use the analogy that if someone looked in the window of your organization, culture would be what was happening in there. And like Coach said, it's the way you live. I had an old coach say to me, it's what we do, it's who we are, it's how we live. And so, at the end of the day, it's the organization, the people who are part of the organization, it's how they live, it's the things that they do that go along with what we said we would do most of the time.
Right. Coach Glaser, adding on to that for me.
Yeah, I agree with both those guys. And, kind of what you get is attitude and behavior. I mean, how your kids act, not only in your program, but outside. And obviously for us, your culture, what you look at it is the overall program. Now, in my opinion, it's the job of each side of the ball to create the environment for their kids to promote the goals of the program. And what I'm talking about is each phase of the game, like Coach X said, you get your mission statements, but, say on each side of the ball, you get your defensive goals, defensive identity, things like that. You have to tie that in to the head coach's vision of the program, because everybody has to be aligned and everybody must have a common direction and a mission, because in my opinion, everybody in the program has to begin to think and act the same way in order to be successful as far as on and off the field, the way you can't carry yourself, the way you handle adversity. And, we have to get the message of our head coach across to our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of everybody's hit on it. It's more of what you do than necessarily what you say. Coach Eck, you kind of made the comment about mission statements, and your culture is more of what's going on the standard. How do you balance that, Coach, between as a head football coach leading a program, and then kind of as everybody in this, but how do you balance of this is what I want our organization to look like, with also being able to see actually who you are at that time right now?
Well, I think you have to. I do think in coaching you get what you emphasize. So, and I think if you emphasize too much, it gets watered down. So I think if you can, have 2, 3, 4 things, probably not many more than 4 that you're really gonna, hang your hat on, and that can be something that you're constantly communicating to the kids about and teaching them about, and they're hearing the same message from many different voices, meaning, not only you, but the assistant coaches, director of operations, trainers, strength coaches, team chaplains, mental performance coach. If they can hear a lot of those same messages from different voices, I think you will get that and emphasize that. And I think a lot of it comes to not just talking about it, but showing them and having the staff live, those core values as Coach Malone talked about, and make sure you're exemplifying it, because some kids will adapt it to your culture very easily and not fight it, where other kids, I think you really have to educate them, really on what it is and how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Malone, talk about, your role. You've been in many different leadership roles throughout your career as far as assistant head coach, and you became the assistant head coach there at Kansas State, and taking on that. So leadership, something I know you have a podcast and you talk about leadership a lot. It's a word we use all the time, but not necessarily something. What leadership may mean to you may mean something different to me. When you hear the word leadership, how do you define that? And what does that look like?
Well, again, like you said, you can go to Webster's and you can get that dictionary definition, and I believe it'll go something like gaining the men or women, gaining their willing acceptance to accomplish the mission. And so when you start there, and you have to understand that if you're going to be a leader, you have to care about the people you're going to deal with, right? And you hear all the time, they don't care what you know, they just want to know that you care, right? And so the leader first has to care, and then he has to gain the willing, he has to have the people in the organization be willing to follow him or her. And then, and if you don't do that, then now you got a dictatorship, right? And so, for us as coaches, especially up until this present time, it's always been a situation where you do what I say and don't worry about why, and that's kind of how coaching has been. That's how it was for me in a lot of cases. But the student athlete that we're dealing with today, you're going to have to gain their willing acceptance, right? Because there are too many avenues for them to be able to escape the process. And so for me, leadership is grabbing my guys up, letting them know that we are in this together as we build this culture. But I am, as the leader, I am willing to get dirty with them. I don't believe leadership is a hierarchy. I kind of believe it's a cross. We're all working together, right? Some people have different roles. My role as the coach, as the person out front, is different than my players, right? But I have to make sure that they understand that we're all in this together. So my definition of leadership, it kind of is wrapped around the dictionary definition, but I believe that it's more about caring, it's more about continually driving the culture, and it's more about the mission being very important, but the people who are accomplishing the mission, I think they have to have a big time place as well as you drive toward the team goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coach Glaser, I know you took over as an interim DC during the course of the year. So leadership to get a group of guys to buy in during the course of the season. And then they're taking over there as the defensive coordinator in Northwestern State. Talk a little bit about the leadership and what you saw in those roles. Those were tough times. Those were tough situations. You didn't have a spring ball. to be able to grab those guys like Coach Malone talked about. So how do you put all that together and do it so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, I mean, when you're coming into a negative situation where it is an interim role, bad things happen. Obviously, it's what happened. You find out leaders are not only positive but negative, and that's the big thing. They have an influence over guys in the locker room. Who has that influence and why? And I personally believe everything begins with the coaching staff, and it goes back like we talked about culture earlier. Coach Eck talked about your 1 to 4 things you got, and you have to reiterate that. But defining to your kids, especially for me as a defense coordinator in those situations, what are my expectations? How do we achieve these expectations? You have to explain that to the kids, and how do you hold those kids to the standard? I think that last one being the biggest one, and that's kind of how they start buying in as you reiterate that message, but they see the path of what you want, and the most important part is having players be leaders that implement what you want, that implement your mission, your culture, your message. And if you don't have leaders that are players that can achieve your expectations, hold others accountable, and reiterate your message, it's going to be hard to be successful. And, in the locker room, like I said, you're going to have positive leadership, negative leadership, and it's our job to grow the positive so much that the negative energy or, so-called cancers in your locker room, they're not going to make it. You're going to have too many guys bought in. And, that, in my opinion, is what buy-in means. Who are your players listening to? Are they listening to the good voices or the bad voices? And you have to get people on the same page there.
Yeah, I always thought that was, I heard a guy talk about the buy-in. You and I have talked about this, Coach Glosser. When you talk about buy-in, it's really talking about belief. You got to put belief. And if you look at belief has action that comes with it. Just because you have a belief, if there's no action that comes with it, if there's no action that follows, it's nothing special. But that belief that you get that comes from that, and that belief that they become with coaches, with their program and the direction, man, I think that's what moves those mountains that you're trying to be able to do in those spots. Because we've all been in tough situations, whether it's taking over a new program, whether it's taking over a role in an adverse situation. And so I think the belief piece is a huge piece of it. And so I love hearing about that. Coach Eck, you've held a lot of different roles in your career, from an offensive line coach to a coordinator to now head football coach. Talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, Coach, talk about, has your leadership style changed? Has it evolved? Has it grown? If it has, how so? And then how much has the roles that you've held, has that forced your leadership style to change?
Yeah, I think I've grown a lot from, my younger years. And, I think, one of the biggest things I think with leadership is you have to accept responsibility for things that you don't have full control over. And I think that can be tough as a young coach to take ownership of, a guy skipping class in my position group.
Right.
It's easy to think that's not my fault that he slept in, but in reality, it is my fault. I'm responsible for him. That's my unit. And I think I grew as a coach as I embraced that more, that, hey, I'm, my players' grades are my grades. How they're acting off the field is a complete reflection of me as a coach. And I think that kind of humbles you when you do that and helps you lead. And I think I've grown in my understanding. And again, I think it's, my definition probably is a lot different than I would have given you when I was a 25-year-old coach or a 30-year-old coach or even a 35-year-old coach. And, I think it's getting people to go where they can't go themselves. And I think it's a lot of belief. I think, when you believe in people, I think it empowers them. And, I think back of the head coach I worked for at South Dakota State, I learned a lot from him about believing in your players and, the growth and development that can come when you believe in your players. And he was really the first head coach who I ever worked for who told me, hey, Coach Eck, I think you should, think about being a head coach someday. And, him believing in me that way, I think empowered me in my career. So, I think believing and trusting in people, sometimes when they haven't necessarily even earned it yet, right, is a powerful thing with empowering, kind of like, Coach Van and Coach Weston said, creating that player leadership. And I think there's always leaders in situations. I think when I was younger, I was on some staffs where sometimes we talked as a coaching staff about, well, we don't have great leadership on this team. and I kind of more with what Weston was saying about there's always leaders. You take any group of 100 men, there's going to be leaders. And if we can't identify them, they're probably leading them to the party or to smoke dope or to the bar. You know, they're leading them the wrong way. So there's leaders in every situation.
Yeah. I think it's a great point that you talk about is belief. And it's, I'm a defense coach, so I'm the consummate, everything's wrong. You never know what they're going to give us. You better prepare for every situation. And so it's seen as believing, in some situations. But to your point, Coach, somebody had to believe in me to give me opportunities before they saw it. And, if I want that same belief, then I think it's important. Great point for you, from you to be able to, what kind of existence are we talking things into with our kids? Are we talking about the negative? Are we talking about the positive in that spot? And so, Coach Malone, talk a little bit about your leadership style and how it's changed, maybe from some different roles that you've had, maybe on different staffs where you were asked to be in different roles, and how did you adjust your leadership style to fit that was still holding true to who you are as a man?
Well, I think it is important that as a coach, you have to discover who you are. Where do you want to take the young men? And so I would say, because I ask questions of leaders all the time, what kind of leader are you? And I would say that I'm a transformational leader. I'm committed to taking a young man or young woman, whoever it might be that I'm dealing with, and transforming them like people transform me. And taking them from one place to another over the course of time that I'm with that person. Now, like Coach said, I definitely have grown over the years, and the roles that I've been in, especially the role that I'm here at Kansas State. What I get the opportunity to do is I get to be in the room with Coach Kleiman, our head coach, and what that does for me, or what that did for me, is that really opened my eyes as a leader, because what you do is you're a position coach and you lead your running backs, or you lead your offensive line, and actually what's going on with the wide receivers is none of your business. It has nothing to do with you, and you're only concerned about your scholarship numbers. But the head coach and the defensive and offensive coordinator and the special teams coordinator, the roles that those guys are in, they have to be involved in a lot more than you as a position coach. And I was very narrow early in my career in my thinking, right? Because everything revolved around the position that I coach, right? And why would I ever give up one of my scholarship numbers? I need this scholarship number. Well, the head coach understands that we don't have a backup running back, or that our deep snapper is about to quit the team. And so, over the years, I've just grown in a way to be a little bit more of a servant leader as well, to understand that in that role of leadership, that it's about more than you.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, Coach Glaser, because I know you and I spent time together. I'm on two different coaching staffs, and that's one of the things, a word I would use to describe you as a guy that's a servant leader. In that, is that something that's more intentional for you, or is that fit your personality, or how do you go about that?
I think both. And for me, Coach Malone touched on this earlier, and it kind of gets back to the way I view my personal leadership is trust. That's something big to me. Trust between not only me and the players, but me and the defensive coaching staff and the rest of the coaching staff as well. People have to trust each other. And so, for me, that's a lot of things. I think being a servant leader, doing it by example, is huge. I got here at Northwestern State, and our GAs, it blew their mind. I was picking up field equipment, but that's the things, in my opinion, you have to do. But the kids have to trust and believe in you. Belief is big for me, and I know you know that because we coached together for a while. But me as a defensive coordinator, the way I think I gained that trust, and it's my honest opinion, I have to put our kids in a position to be successful. I do. I have to ask them to do things that they can do and they're capable of. And if I do a poor job of that, if I ask a defensive end to go cover a slot receiver, that kid's not going to win. That ain't going to happen. Well, now you start losing that trust. The staff loses trust because you gave up a big play. And so if I'm successful in doing that, guys are able to have success, which builds trust in me. And also, like you said, leading by example. Coach Malone said it, servant leadership. I think it's huge. You know, and for these kids, if you do it the right way, I think that naturally makes you better as a program and as a whole when they see how it's done and, you know, how things should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of leads me to kind of what you're talking about, leadership and servant leadership and trying to implement that into your kids. You know, Coach Eck taking over a new program, coming in there and setting your culture of the program. You know, what do you do outside the walls of your building that promote that leadership within your program to give your guys opportunities to see those things? Do you do anything specific, or is that more of a organic process that happens outside the building?
Yeah, you know, we try to expose our guys to a lot of things. You know, we you know, during the spring on Wednesday mornings, we had we called non-football meetings, and in our non-football meetings, you know, we brought people to speak to the team. You know, really trying to use all the resources that we have on a college campus. I think a college campus is a pretty amazing place with all the things that go on that, you know, the kids a lot of times won't know about, you know, things or won't utilize that. But whether it was, you know, a chaplain or, you know, with one of the churches on campus coming to visit with the team, you know, but knowing about opportunities like for Bible studies, things like that. You know, we had a guy from the African American Center on campus come and speak and, you know that there's another outlet, because that can be a challenging thing in Idaho, where a state where there's just not a lot of natural diversity built in, and making sure those guys feel comfortable. And then, you know, we had some community service projects. We did a Be the Match, you know, drive through the Andy Talley Foundation, which I think gave guys some perspective on, you know, things that are bigger than football, you know, saving a life and, you know, trying to think of others and do things that way. So, you know, I think it's always important to try to have some areas where they can grow. And I'm a big believer in, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I think if you can develop some leadership in areas that are, you know, outside of football, that will carry over and make your players better leaders when it comes to football.
Yeah. One of the things we always try to do is kind of like what you were talking about when I was at Howard Payne, is we try to bring those people in from the local community, whether it was a bank, a person that ran a bank. What I saw it do, it helped our kids, but it also helped the community have some belief in our program and being able to see our young men. A lot of the people, if they're not involved in the university that's there, the only time they may hear about a football player, and most of the time it's probably a negative, something bad happened in those spots. And what I saw was allowed the community to be able to open their eyes to, man, this is a great question this kid asked me. He wants to know about what a job interview looks like. And then what happened was they would go and drink coffee at wherever they drink coffee in the morning, and then word spread and helped open those doors to be able to bridge that gap. Because, you know, I think Coach Eck makes a great point. You know, a college campus in a college town, you're never going to get those opportunities again in most worlds. And so for them to be able to get to be invested, you know, I think that's a really unique opportunity for young men to be able to see those things, that how they affect their community and how their community affects them in both those ways. I think football, sometimes we kind of get blinders on and we just stay within the building and we just focus on us. And sometimes we try to do so much to control a guy's environment that we don't allow him to see all the things that he can in his potential in those spots. And so I love hearing about those things. I've been a part of the Tally bone marrow drive. Coach Eck actually got me involved in that. He grabbed me one year at AFCA and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "You're going with me." And so I just went with him because he's bigger than I am, and I was scared of him a little bit, and ended up being a great deal and great opportunity to be a part of it in that spot. So Coach Malone, you've been a part of really good football programs for a long time. You've been a part of ones that you've started at the bottom and risen to the top. Out of those things, being a part of those programs, what is something that you saw a characteristic in those programs that maybe you saw carry over a little bit, that in all of those you saw, man, this was a piece that was there that made us be successful in those spots?
I think that, you know, we've said it, and it just on this call so far, we've said it at least 6 times. It's belief. Right. The first thing on all those successful programs is that the players and the coaches, they believed. What did they believe? They believed that that they could do it, right? They believed that if they did things the way the way it was mapped out by the program, by the coaches, that we could accomplish great things, right? And what would great things be? Who knows? But they believed in themselves. The programs that were not successful, there was no belief. The next thing, and there are a lot of things, but the next thing
Right.
that I saw throughout the positive programs that I've or the successful programs that I've been in is positive energy. And Weston kind of alluded to it a second ago. Is that positive operations. The coaches were positive. Now, did everything go right every time? No, but there was very little negative energy in the programs where there was success. Negative energy. Guys were not getting arrested, right? When we struggle, the times when we struggled on teams, guys didn't go to class. There were all kinds of off the field issues. All kinds of stuff always happened in these programs. But when you had successful programs, again, it goes back to what we talked about, the culture, the behavior, which Weston talked about. The guys just didn't go down the negative road. There was always a why in the road. And in the successful programs, the culture was powerful enough that guys always chose the right path. And again, there was very little negative energy.
We kind of stepped on my toes a little bit as a coach, because you talked about belief, and it's one thing for me as a coach to get kids to believe. It's another thing for me to believe in those spots. And that's how important do you think that is? The coaches, that what they say, what they do matters, because we're probably the most unbelieving people in the whole building.
Well,
in a lot of times.
I think it's a fight because we coach, right? They pay us to coach, to critique, to criticize, to evaluate, to
Right.
document. They pay us to do that, but I think it's a very thin line for us as coaches. You can't always walk into the meeting room and tell them what they did wrong. Sometimes you have to layer that with some positives, and sometimes you have to say, this is how we could be better, right? Rather than this is what you did wrong. And so that goes right into the belief factor, right? The players, they know, right? They know when you don't believe in them. They know it. They can see it in your eyes. They can see it in your movement. They can hear your sighs, right? And so man, I think that for us as coaches, right, sometimes we got to fake it until we make it.
That's right. Well, that's how I got where I am, faking it till I make it. And that's how I got my wife to marry me. That's for sure. Fake it till I make it in that spot. So Coach Glaser, talk a little bit about that kind of same question, winning programs. You've been a part of, national champion runner up there at Sam Houston, I think 2 out of 3 years in a row there with the old Bearcats. So talk about what you've seen in those programs, the characteristic that kind of carries over.
Yeah, and we're going to reiterate it again, like Coach Malone said. I mean, belief is the big thing, and that's it. And I think we talk about trusting the process, and the thing is, in every football season, you're going to have adversity. It's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. Adversity is going to hit, and teams that don't believe, that's the ones where it's going to cause a rift. There's going to be division. There's going to be things that happen. Teams that believe are going to keep their head down but continue to trust the process. And whether it be a loss and an injury, anything that happens, how do you keep that going? And don't look up until the end. And that's the key on those teams. I mean, I'll never forget at Sam Houston, the first run we made, it was every week seemed like a new season. It didn't matter what happened the week before, the negative things like that. It was just, you kept your head down, then you look up and you're in a good position. And then on the flip side of that, Coach Malone touched on this as well about positivity and reinforcement and going in with the kids. I believe your messaging is huge. And that is, like Coach Malone said, and I talked about positive energy and positive reinforcement, what's happening. Coach Harris, you were with me, kind of on a defensive side, what we did. We show clips every day to the defense to kind of reiterate our standard, our expectations, what we want to do. And the way you message that is, hey, guys, there's some clips that are things that are going to win us a championship. So they hear that. and here's some clips that we need to improve. And as you go on that, the kids know, I mean, they know what's good, what's bad, what you expect. And if you're showing them on film, you can't deny it. I mean, it's right there for everybody. Now everybody's getting on the same page where it's not just, oh, hey, you know, coach is picking on so-and-so all the time for no reason. Well, now you're seeing what's happening. And so I think the messaging's huge, and then positive reinforcement to kids, you know, as much as, and we hear it as coaches all the time, anytime, you know, you have to correct a kid or be negative, you need to come back positive, put your arm around him. And I truly believe in that, because if they don't believe you believe in them, they're not going to believe in themselves. And it's going to lead to negative things. And any good program I've been in, the kids have had that. They've believed in each other, believed in the coaches, and they've been able to be successful that way.
All right, Pat, so we need to change the topic to belief, not necessarily culture and leadership. And so I've heard it 8 times now, Coach Malone. So I figured I picked it up on 8. And so that shows you a guy from Texas is a little slow sometimes. So it's my bad on that. But Jason, talk about the word belief. So let's go with that a little bit. As a head football coach for a program, there's a lot of different people that you have to get believing in your program and in what you're doing. How do you manage that? How do you manage the people outside the building that ultimately you need them to believe in what's going on inside the building?
You know, I think it's relationship based. You know, I think it's getting people to know you, getting people to trust you, and I think it's working on, you know, actively building relationships. You know, part of I'm going to go back to our non-football meeting again, which I already talked about, but, you know, we'll break into small groups, and sometimes that'll be, you know, a position group, but I think the best ones are when we split the position groups up and we kind of intermix it, and we're just learning about each other. You know, we're asking questions. You know, what, you know, some of the things we've asked today. What does leadership mean to the kids? And having, you know, the corner for us who's from LA, you know, talk to the O-lineman who's from a small town in Idaho, and, you know, have them, you know, build that relationship where they can see where different guys are coming from and their different views of on things. Because you know, your perspectives can be so different. I think being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and you know, build that closeness where you care about each other can really add to that belief. But it's critical. It's critical that guys, you know, build that trust and build those relationships. And I do think you have to have. I think every coach would say they want a close team, but how you facilitate that and how you work on it is critical, because it doesn't happen naturally.
Yeah. The people in the building, you could always control their schedule and kind of control their circumstances. It was the administrators across the street that you need them to believe in, the donors that you need to be able to help believe in, the community members, like you said, Coach, that maybe you got to walk on that needs a summer job in those pieces. You know, that was always the piece that it was hard for me to balance between in the building and out of the building, because if you didn't do the in the building, the out of the building didn't matter. Because if you lose, they don't care. You may be the nicest guy in the world, but you got to go in that spot. And so how are you seeing that in year 1 for you there, Coach?
You know, I think that's probably one of the biggest changes, you know, going from being an assistant coach to a head coach, you know, that I'm learning is you spend more time out of the building dealing with people and building those relationships. And again, I think you have to have great belief and trust in your assistant coaches, that and what they can do, so that you're not feeling like you have to micromanage everything, because you don't want, you know, if I'm growing across town or out of town, you know, I had to go down to Boise, Idaho during the Big Sky basketball tournament, and you know, met with a lot of, you know, donors down there, and, you know, I got to trust if I'm away for 3 days that the assistants aren't waiting around for me for guidance and leadership. You know, they need to be able and feel like they're empowered, you know, to go on and get a lot of stuff done, you know, while I'm gone. But I do think that's important, because there's, you know, I think a college football program is very unique. It's not like the NFL where there's, you know, one owner that you answer to. You know, we need a lot of boosters to fund, you know, what we do, and you have to spend time with them and make sure they're, you know, feeling engaged and feeling that they have a personal, you know, investment in the program. And your alumni base is the same way. And, you know, for us, you know, at a school, we're in a smaller town, you know, 27,000 people. You know, we need the students to come out. We need the fraternities and sororities on campus to feel like they're a part of it. And again, I think it comes back to time. You got to invest time and spend time with people so they feel that they're a part of it, and they want to be invested and be with you on Saturdays, or if they're boosters and alums who are far away or are willing to invest in your program with resources they have.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
Braxton, can I add something? Because exactly what Coach Egg talked about, I remember at SMU, what we did, kind of another level of it, is we grabbed all of the people on campus who touched our program. Like nobody ever worries about the guy who cuts the grass, the facilities guy, but we had a luncheon for those people like the guys in facilities, people like the police officers on campus. And as a staff, we talked about this, and we talked about how strong it was once we done it, because like the guy who works in facilities, his uncle is on the Board of Regents, right? And so those relationships that we form with a group of people that most of the time coaches don't even regard, but we grab those people up to say thank you to those people. And that message that you talked about, right, getting outside the building, outside the walls, that message, it carried much farther than we had an idea that it would. Plus, again, the guy who cuts the grass, and we try to have our players understand, going back to culture again, we try to have our players understand that there's a lot of people who make the football team go, that make the program go, people that you don't even, yeah, you see the trainer, yeah, you see the nutritionist, but the facilities guy, he's not cutting that grass. If he's not taking care of the restrooms, then we got problems. And so having our players, even our coaches need to understand it first, but having our players understand that, we thought was beneficial for the future of our program.
Yeah, that's really good, because I always would buy 150 extra hats, and that was my giveaway hat. And I would walk around campus, and it's amazing what a $10 hat, if you walked in and gave it to them, I mean, that's the best thing in the world. And then what it also did, it created that sense of ownership for them, because they're proud of that hat. Then when they came into your building, they're wearing that hat instead of a John Deere hat when they're doing something. And what helped our kids create was, hey, people care. You see your logo everywhere. They care. You're not just somebody that's here. And so, but I love the point that you made, Coach Malone, as far as connecting your players to that. As coaches, we always we got to do this, but sometimes we don't take the time to connect to the players, to the why, because you're busy. I mean, we can say whatever why we don't do it, right? I mean, we all got reasons, but at the end of the day, we don't do it because we don't see the value in that. And what it does, to your point, it allows our players to be able to see those things in a broader spectrum. That's only going to help them as they grow. Hopefully they get a job. They got somebody that come and takes their trash out. Hopefully they, leave them a card at Christmas time with some thank yous for what you do for me. And maybe they learn that because they play football. And to me, those are still things that are important in this game. To be able to do it. But I love the point of connecting the players to those people. I think it's a big deal in this spot. So love that.
Those $10 hats that probably had $100 impact.
Coach, huge. It's amazing how those guys came over and like guys that cut grass. I mean, hey, Coach, we're going to do a little bit extra right here. Hey, Coach, we found a little bit more money to put an extra thing of fertilizer down. And when we were in Brownwood, Texas, Coach Jack, there wasn't a whole lot of water in the summertime, and the city says you got to be careful how you're watering. Hey, baby, my field was green. Now, they might not have been able to water their yards in the city, but my practice field is green because of those $10 hats. That's for sure. But to your point, Coach Jack, everything matters in that spot, and it's how you treat those spots. I think that's a great point. So, Coach Glaser, kind of moving on and talking to a different topic right here, talking about leadership and how you grow in this spot is you've always got good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, whether it's a game plan you're putting together, whether it's a practice plan you're putting together. If it's a meeting that you're putting together, good things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen. That as a coordinator of a side of the ball, everybody's watching you to see how you handle those spots. How important do you think it is for you and your role there at Northwestern State to show the response that you want your kids to be able to do? And then, why do you think that's so important for them to see those things?
I think it's one of the most critical part of our jobs is how our players see us react and handle the situations. I mean, we always preach to them how to handle adversity and how to handle things that go bad. And when it's back on us, how do we set that example for them? Especially for me in the world we live in today, I think it's even more important because, and everybody in this room knows, with COVID, you don't know what's going to happen. And so you can't flinch when changes happen or things happen. Say you lose 3 starters before a game because all of a sudden, they're on a protocol list. How do your players see you respond? And, and for me, how we handle adversity is huge to our players, especially during a game, how they see us on a sideline or in practice. If bad things happen, what do you do? And if you handle yourself the right way, it shows our players we're confident in the process and what we're doing. It also goes back to what we talked about earlier. It shows players you have confidence in them, that you have trust in them because you don't flinch. If all of a sudden somebody goes down and well, what is that backup thing? Does he think when he goes in there like, well, coach thinks I can do this? No, he doesn't feel that way. So you have to be able to roll with the punches and be able to respond. And once again, it goes back. We preach it so much to our players. We have to be able to do it as well. And I think on the flip side of that, the message you're able to give your players, I know I've talked about it at Campbell with you at Northwestern State here, you never know what somebody else is going through, and I tell our players that for player to player, but also as a coach, you don't know everything your players are going through. You don't know what your coaching staff is going through. Everybody's got something happening. And, how do you bring that positive energy every day and respond and show up to work every day is critical. And if your players see you doing that, it's going to inspire them and encourage them to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's the response. I vividly remember we were playing we lost a close ball game and I was the head coach, and I sat down in the locker room and just looking at my phone, and we had an older coach on our staff that he told me exactly how it was, whether I liked it or not. And when I first met him, I didn't love that about him, but as I grew, man, that was my guy. He would get me right. And he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "What are you doing, coach?" And so I'm just looking at my phone and said, "You can't put your head down and look at your phone. These kids, they'll see that right now." And, that was something that was a great reminder to have people around you, number one, that see those things and that care about you enough to be able to look at those pieces in this spot. So talked about leadership. I know to everybody in this room, family is a part of it. How do you implement your family into your program, into your kids, as far as how they work? Coach Malone, if you don't mind kind of hitting this off here, how do you implement those two crossing over? Because I truly believe that's a unique opportunity that we have to help young men to be able to see those things as they grow.
Well, I have a very unique situation being able to implement my family is because I get the opportunity to coach one of my sons. And we, as coaches, we coach a lot of other people's kids, and we don't get an opportunity to go to our own kids' spelling bees and go to our own kids' games and practices. But we are locked in on a recruit's track meet, And so for me, I just feel like God has blessed me to be able to have the opportunity to coach my son. But beyond that, and I'll go back to when I was a young coach. When I was a young coach, just like I am now as a more seasoned coach, I work hard and I'm at the office from when the office opens until when it closes, right? That's just what I do. And that's not the right way to be. But early in my career, I really fought against that. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to stay at the office. I want to be at home. So I'm going to grab my briefcase and my laptop, and I'm going to go home and do some of this work at home so I can be at home with my family. And so I would lock up in a room, and I'd be at home, but I'd be locked up in a room. And so then I got really smart, and I questioned myself am I really home? Yeah, I'm at the address, but I'm not interacting with my family, so I'm not really home. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wake up earlier when they're still asleep, right? And I'm going to go to the office earlier so that I can at least at bedtime be able to come home and be a part of their lives, to be able to interact with them, because just being at the address is not good enough. And so the fact that I get an opportunity to coach Vaughn, right, that made up for all that time that I was not at home, that I was not a part of their lives. But I think it's important for us as coaches, man, to always understand that when University XYZ says, okay, time for you to go, you're still going to be a father and you're still going to be a husband. And so we got to make sure that the number of games we win, the number of conference titles and all that stuff that we accomplish as a coach, it'll never make up for the moments that you miss as a father. And I had Joe Kynes told me that, you know, man, you're going to look up and they're going to be gone. And you're going to have your bowl rings and your championship rings. They'll still be there, but your kids will be gone. And so I really try to do all I can with my other kids and with my wife to make sure that, man, I'm present and that, yes, our job, it takes a lot, but we also have a responsibility to be a part of their lives as well.
Man, that's good. And you stepped on my toes. I should have I wore sandals tonight, Coach. I wasn't ready for that. So I'll make sure I bring my boots next time from Texas for that one. But that's good stuff. Right,
I step on my own toes in that.
Coach Eck, your family got a big family. I know your family's a big part of it. I know your wife Kimberly's a big part of what you do. Great family involved. How do you guys incorporate your family, your kids into the program? How do you lead your family during the time when you're gone so much?
I think so much of coaching, you know, there's so many things you maybe don't take advantage or not take advantage of, but take for granted as a coach that you miss sometimes the impact you have. And, you know, I've had a few former players, you know, come back to me now that are fathers and, you know, talk about just, you know, especially some guys who maybe didn't have great male role models growing up, and, you know, having family around, I think is a great thing just to see, you know, to model behavior. You know, I still think one of the, like a lot of the coaches talked about, both Van and Weston talked about, you know, modeling the behavior as a coach is important. So, you know, I think, you know, coaches, you know, we're trying to have our coaches and their kids, you know, practice as much as they can in the building, because I think it's great for our players to see our staff being fathers and modeling that behavior, because, you know, especially like at the FCS level, you know, maybe we'll have a couple guys who got a chance to be a free agent or get in the camp, but, you know, majority of the guys are not. So, you know, preparing them to be better fathers and better husbands down the road, I think is a great value that we can help these young men with. And, you know, again, a lot of times it's better to show them than tell them, you know, how to do it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to make sure if I can get an invite to the dirty party that you guys throw every springtime. I know you guys do a big one there. But that's Kimberly, not you, right, Coach?
Yeah, and she runs the show. She's really the superstar behind everything. So I'm very thankful for her and all that she does. I mean, she likes to, you know, bake cookies for the players and things and do things like that. So I'm fortunate. Not only is she a great you know, mother to my 5 kids, but our 5 kids, but she does a great job you know, caring for our players as well. And, you know, it's such a transition, especially for your young players who are away for the first time. You know, those little things that maybe is little to us is big to them.
Absolutely. I think
You know,
that's
Coach,
awesome.
if you don't mind, I like stepping off, Coach Eck. I think too, not only our players seeing how we interact, but having our kids around at practice. I know at Campbell we had all of our kids running around, but how they see you and your players and how they see your players handle themselves as well, I think is big on our kids. You know, I know when I was at Campbell, we had a linebacker, Justice Galloway, who my oldest son loved. I mean, they played catch together after practice, and just having a role model like that close for my son was big to me. And, you know, that's something very important to me. You know, that's a question when I came to Northwestern State, I asked Coach Laird, you know, what can my kids come to practice? Can my wife come to practice? Can they be in the office? And that's something big. You know, they came up today at lunch, brought me lunch, had lunch up here running around like crazy, you know, and they'll remember that forever. And I think that's big. It's like Coach Malone said earlier, it's time you're never going to get back. And, you know, we all grind, and you got to take time to enjoy your family.
Yeah. I think that's always the thing that, you know, you're told in this business that you can't, you have to sacrifice one for the other. And, you know, I've never wanted to be a part of something like that. If I have to sacrifice being a husband first and being a father to be a successful football coach, life's too short in that spot. And, that's the thankful thing. And that's why I wanted to do this with guys like yourself, is I want to get that message out that there's ways to do it. Like Coach Malone said, hey, the great thing about college football coaching is that here's what's got to get done. Go get it done. So if it means come in at 6 because you get to put them in bed at night, be that consistent deal. One of the things when I was at Howard Payne, I always tried to take them to school every morning. So that was time every single day that we were in the car, and that we had that time. And what I'm trying to do is create that memory of Dad took us to school. Dad was there. My dad was a high school football coach in Texas. I remember when I was in college, a guy asked me, he said, was your dad always gone? You probably never got to see your dad. And for me, I never remembered it that way. I remember my dad being involved, but looking back, he was very intentional in those moments. He moved things around to make it work in those spots. And that intentionality was everything, because for me, my whole life growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be a football coach. And the reason I wanted to be that was because I saw the influence, I saw the impact that my dad made. Kind of to your point, Coach Glaser, I was the kid standing on the sidelines, watching those relationships happen and grow. And man, that's all I ever wanted to do. I'm living my dream every single day because I get to coach football. There's a lot of different things that I've been presented opportunities to do, and it's never even crossed my mind. I mean, making more money, less hours, all those things. And I know Coach Glaser, you went that path for a little bit in those roles and came back to you took a job with me at Howard Payne for, I think we had to put you on food stamps just to get you there. That was part of your package. That was your combination, your salary package to get you there in those spots. And so, but I think it's something that it's got to be a calling in who you are, and it's got to see bigger than what you see X and O's in that spot. So, hey, kind of wrapping up, just kind of grab everybody real quick, and the best leader you've been around. What made him the best leader, and just talk about that a little bit. Coach Jack, if you don't mind leading us off here.
I would probably start with my college coach, Coach Alvarez, and then I had an opportunity to work under him as a graduate assistant. And I think he did a great job of. He was consistent. I think he really did a good job of preparing us for what was to come. I think we always felt like we were prepared. He had good anticipation for reading situations, and just never. He always felt like he was ahead of the curve of telling us how things were going to be rather than reacting. And I think he did a good job. He kept his composure. He was a consistent guy who was not a ranter and raver, but I think that preserved it so that when he did, like when you saw Coach Alvarez get upset, everyone kind of looked around like, whoa, we better get our stuff together quick, because he usually didn't do that. And, so I think his consistency, and I think his, the kids definitely vibe off of you. I think he had great confidence, and that confidence carried over to the players. We felt his confidence, and I think that gave the players confidence.
Great. Coach Malone, I'll preface you and Coach Glaser in saying that you can't pick your current head coach, just to give you off the hook right there for not picking him as the best leader. So it's got to be somebody other than your current head coach. And so that's my rule, not yours. I know you would have picked him automatically out of the gate. That's understood. But give me somebody else right there.
Well, because he's promised me a raise, so I definitely would have picked him to. No.
There you go. Absolutely. It's recorded now. We're good.
No, I've been around some phenomenal leaders, but the guy that I will pick for this, because of where we're talking today, is Gary Darnell. And I worked with Coach Darnell when we were at Western Michigan. And I was only with Coach Darnell at Western Michigan for 1 year, but he coached me in college as well. And we worked together at Texas A&M. And the reason that I picked Coach Darnell is because we talked earlier about how the leader is supposed to respond. And at that moment, we had something we call E plus R equals O. And I don't know, we got it from somewhere, but there's always events. The event plus your response equals the outcome. And that's something that he pushed hard. But I watched him, like Coach Eck talked about, I watched him exemplify that, because I didn't know this as a young coach that as sometimes we get these ultimatums as a coach, is that you better win or or things will be changing quickly. Well, I didn't know that he was operating behind, one of those kinds of ultimatums. And we didn't have a good team and we were not getting it done. But every day he still came, like Coach Weston talked about. He came every day with the same energy. He never lost his cool when things didn't go the right way. He was always the consummate leader for me. As a young coach who was not studying leadership at this moment, he gave me the example of how to handle adversity. He gave me the example of how to handle people when they didn't want to be in the room, how to handle kids when they didn't believe in themselves, when we were not very good. But he was continually positive throughout that whole time. And so I choose Gary Darnell as the best leader I've been around.
That's awesome. That's great. Coach Glaser, best leader.
Yeah, real quick, and I'll talk about that. But Coach Malone, kind of you talked about when things aren't going well, man, that's when you learn the most about yourself. Like you said, that's when you learn the most about what type of coach you are and how you respond. But best leader for me, I've been very, very blessed in my career. I've been around some great head coaches. I've been around some great coordinators and learned a ton. One of them I learned a lot from. I'm looking at great leader, but I'll exclude you because you're in here. But outside,
we understood that, Coach Foster. You didn't.
Oh yeah, but outside, I'm going to go actually. Outside of the football ranks, Rick Hendrick, Mr. Hendrick at Hendrick Motorsports. I had the opportunity to work there for Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. But the way he ran that organization and the way he was with the people who worked for him, what was unbelievable. I mean, he had, I couldn't tell you how many employees at his organization, but he knew everybody by name, knew how to handle them, how to respond. But the way he set his culture of you did things to not let him down. It wasn't a fear of your job or fear of any of that, but you didn't want to let him down because of the person he was and how he led things. And then on the flip side of that, I was able to work, my two immediate bosses there, were Chad Knaus and Steve Letarte at the time. They were crew chiefs. Both of them were completely different, but both of them were winners. And that was something I learned of. You had Chad Knaus, who was completely on top of everything, every detail, knew everything that was going on, and his people worked hard and he won. And then you have Steve Letarte, who would tell you, I don't know everything about a car, but I know how to hire people who do and how to, inspire those people to be the best. And so my time there, seeing just leadership outside of football was something big for me, impacted me a lot because, it's a little bit different messaging that you're trying to get, but how do you get that across and motivate people to work harder?
Yeah, that's great. For me personally, Pete Fredenberg, one of the greatest leaders I've ever been around. He's in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, won 3 national championships. I was fortunate enough to play for him and then transition to coach from him. And the one thing I can say, there's a lot of things you can talk about Coach Fredenberg and say that he did and that he is and that he still is those things. The one thing that I say about him as a leader is he made everyone around him better. And you were better because you were a part of that organization. And how I gauge that is not while I was a part of that organization, because when you're in that organization, that's just what you know. That is normal. That is Monday. That is Tuesday. That is what it looks like. But when you leave that organization and you go to different organizations, I continued to learn from Coach Fredenberg in every single situation. I would go back to that. Even now, I've been coaching probably 15 plus years since I've been with Coach Fredenberg. On Monday, we were talking as a defensive staff, and why I believed we were doing what we're supposed to be doing went back to what Coach Fredenberg taught me and how I believed in that. And so the influence that he's still making on my career, to me, that's the measure. When I look at making decisions, when I was in any role that you have to make a decision, what would Coach Fredenberg do? What would he choose in this spot? And it came down to you, Coach. Kind of what you said, Coach Glaser, man, I did not want to let that guy down. And it's funny, when I was a head football coach, we were in the same conference. I still didn't want to let him down. I still wanted him to see a football team that was played its tail off and played physical when he turned on that tape. And that's crazy, but I actually thought about those thoughts crossed my mind when we would play them. I wonder what he's thinking right now. And I wonder what he sees. And so I don't know if that's Coach Fredenberg's magic that he gets a hold of you. Maybe that's why he is a Hall of Famer. But that was leadership to me. He made a difference and he made an influence in my life, in who I was and how I did things. And I am forever grateful for those things, because I tell you this, I was so fortunate at an early age to learn what was right and what it's supposed to look like. And that's not always the case in this business. There's plenty of people that are going to show you the opposite of that. And for me, it just looks foreign to what I was taught from an early age. That's for sure. So, well, guys, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your opportunity, appreciate your honesty and authenticism in this conversation. It's been great for me. I love hearing guys that are in it for the same reasons and have the same value systems that I share here. And man, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your opportunity. Thanks for doing this with us.
Thank you. Glad.
Thank you.
Young.